The Vanguard cut across the blackness of space like a hunted animal. Its hull groaned, plating torn open by the Yurko fleet's relentless plasma fire. Flames rippled along the left wing. Internal alarms screamed through the corridors, and the crew moved in panicked unison to keep the dying vessel alive. Captain Jarek Cade gripped the controls, his knuckles white. A shard of steel had ripped across his side during the last barrage, leaving blood soaking through his uniform. Pain dulled his vision, but he forced his hand steady, weaving the ship between streams of violet plasma that lit up the void like lightning storms. Beside him, Mira Selene's fingers flew across the navigation panel. Sweat streaked her dirt-stained face, eyes sharp despite the chaos. She rerouted power from auxiliary thrusters, firing short bursts to tilt their descent away from the incoming swarm. Every second counted. One misstep meant death. A Yurko destroyer loomed into view, insectoid in shape, its carapace bristling with cannons. It spat a final blast that shredded the Vanguard's starboard engines. With a roar like the tearing of mountains, the ship broke free of orbit and plunged toward the desert world below. Inside, gravity slammed the crew against bulkheads. Panels burst in showers of sparks. The hull peeled open, exposing glimpses of the burning sky and dunes racing closer. Yarek's hand slipped, blood spraying the console. Mira shouted over the alarms, "Hold on!" as she yanked the emergency landing thrusters. Impact. The Vanguard hit the sands with bone-crushing force, skidding for half a mile before tearing apart. Screams echoed through collapsing corridors. Fireballs roared as fuel cells ruptured, turning wreckage into molten rivers. When the dust settled, silence reclaimed the desert. Jarek staggered from the ruins, every breath a battle. His side had split open wider during the crash, blood pumping in a crimson trail behind him. He collapsed onto his knees, gasping, one hand pressed against the wound. His vision blurred. Stars and sky twisted together. He barely registered the silhouette running toward him. Mira dropped beside him, coughing from smoke and sand. Her uniform was shredded, cuts streaking her arms, but her focus was unshaken. She pulled Jarek onto his back, eyes scanning the injury. One look told her the truth. It was deep, arterial. If the bleeding didn't stop soon, he'd be dead in minutes. She tore through the wreckage, searching for med kits, surgical foam, anything. Nothing remained intact. The crash had consumed every supply. She clenched her jaw, forcing herself not to scream. Around them stretched nothing but desert, endless dunes glowing beneath the twin suns, as barren as a graveyard. Jarek's lips moved faintly. "Leave me. You won't make it carrying me." His voice was raw, each word thick with blood. Mira pressed a hand over his mouth. "Shut up! You're not dying here." Her eyes darted across the desert until they caught a patch of strange flora, towering cactus-like plants, their skins dark green with veins of light pulsing faintly beneath. Their spines gleamed silver, long and sharp as daggers, alien, but alive. An idea struck, dangerous, but the only chance. She sprinted toward one cactus, snapped off a thorn, and held it. The surface hummed faintly, as if alive with stored energy. Her gaze returned to Jarek's wound. If she could stitch it, stop the bleeding, he might survive until help arrived. But she had no thread. Her hand went to her own hair. Without hesitation, she yanked a handful free, the roots tearing at her scalp until tears blurred her vision. She bit the pain down. She twisted the strands together, making crude thread, and looped it through the hollow base of the thorn. Returning to Jarek, she set her jaw. "This is going to hurt," she whispered, though he barely stirred. With steady hands, she pierced his flesh, dragging the thorn through, threading his wound shut with her own hair. His body convulsed at first contact, blood spattering, but she continued, weaving strand by strand until the gash sealed into a ragged but closed line. By the time she tied the final knot, her hands were shaking uncontrollably. Sweat and blood smeared her face, but the bleeding slowed. Yarek's chest rose and fell, shallow but steady. He was alive. Mira exhaled, sinking to her knees beside him. She pressed her forehead against his and whispered, "You're not leaving me here. Not today." Then, in the silence of the desert, she noticed something odd. The thorn in his flesh glowed faintly, pulses of light rippling through his veins like threads of fire. His skin shivered as though responding to the alien energy. Mira pulled back, staring at him with unease. Above them, shadows passed across the sands. The thunder of engines vibrated the ground. Mira looked up to see Yirko warships sweeping low, scanning the dunes. Survivors were prey to them, captured for trophies, dissected for science. Her pulse quickened. They were already hunting. She tightened her grip on the pistol salvaged from the wreck. If they found her and Jarek, there would be no mercy. But she would not let them take him. Not after everything. The desert wind carried the smell of burning metal and blood as Mira crouched beside the man she had just stitched together with her own hair. The war wasn't over. It had only just begun. Night swallowed the desert with a sudden chill, the kind that gnawed bone deep after the day's merciless suns. Mira built a fire from twisted scraps of ship plating and shards of wiring. Sparks rose against the starlit sky, but the flames barely pushed back the cold. She sat with her knees drawn up, pistol across her lap, watching over Jarek as he writhed in uneasy sleep. His skin was pale under the firelight, sweat gleaming across his forehead. The crude stitches, hair threaded through the cactus thorn, throbbed with a faint light she could not ignore. At times it pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. At others it glimmered like something alive, independent of him. Each glow seemed to send shivers through his frame, twisting his muscles, forcing out low growls that sounded less like pain and more like change. She stayed awake the entire night, ready to shoot the sky if a Yirko scout dared approach, but also afraid of what might emerge from her captain's body by morning. When dawn came, Mira jerked awake at the sound of her name. Mira! Her heart slammed. Jarek wasn't lying down anymore. He was standing, not just alive, but steady, his silhouette outlined against the twin rising suns. She rose quickly, pistol raised out of instinct before her breath caught. His wound was gone, sealed as if it had never existed. The stitches, the blood, all erased. But that wasn't what stopped her. It was the thick growth across his arms and chest, hair, coarse and dark, glistening faintly with the same strange light that had pulsed through the thorn. It spread in patterns, almost like armor. His eyes gleamed with unnatural clarity. "I don't know what's happening," he said, voice low, yet charged with a strength she'd never heard in him. He flexed his hands, veins alive with that faint inner glow. "But I feel stronger, faster, like my body doesn't know its limits anymore." Before Mira could answer, the ground quivered. Sand shifted underfoot. The sound of engines cut through the air, shrill, insect-like, too mechanical to be natural. She turned sharply, scanning the horizon. A Yirko patrol skimmer descended, kicking up plumes of sand as it settled. The vessel cracked open and figures emerged, soldiers insectoid in form, their chitin glinting under the sun. Their mandibles clicked as they spread across the dunes, weapons bristling with heat. Mira's chest tightened. They were hunting the wreck, and now they had found it. She dropped into a crouch, aiming her pistol. But Jarek stepped in front of her, hair bristling like quills. His expression was calm, determined, even as plasma rifles locked on him. The first shot tore the sand beside them into glass. Mira fired back instantly, a perfect counterstrike that pierced one Yirko through the eye. Another screeched and charged. Jarek moved before Mira could track him. His body blurred, faster than a human should move. He slammed into the alien with raw force, tearing the weapon free and crushing the creature against the dune until its shell cracked open like brittle stone. A second soldier fired at point-blank range. The plasma bolt struck Jarek's chest, but instead of burning through him, the thick hair flared bright and absorbed much of the blast. He staggered but didn't fall. Instead, he roared, a primal sound, and ripped the weapon from its wielder, swinging it like a hammer that sent another alien sprawling. Mira shot two more with clinical precision, keeping their flank clear. Her mind raced even faster than her aim. What had the thorn done to him? How could he shrug off plasma fire? Within minutes, the dunes were littered with twitching Yirko corpses, their blood a strange iridescent blue soaking into the sand. The patrol skimmer smoked, its hull punctured by stray fire. Silence returned, but Mira couldn't breathe easy. She turned to Jarek. His chest rose and fell fast, his face wild with adrenaline. The hair across his body was still glowing faintly, vibrating like living strands of energy. His eyes met hers. "I didn't just heal," he said, voice hushed with awe. "I've changed. I can feel power flowing through me, like the thorn rewrote something inside. And it's not stopping." Mira's throat tightened. Fear warred with relief. He was alive, stronger than ever. But was he still Jarek? Before she could voice her doubt, Jarek staggered, clutching his head. It's feeding, growing. He knelt in the sand, gasping. The glow dimmed, then flared again, brighter than before. Mira grabbed his shoulders, forcing him to look at her. "Fight it. Whatever it is, don't let it own you. You're still human. Remember that." His eyes softened at her words, focus returning, though sweat dripped heavily from his brow. "I'm trying," he whispered. She helped him to his feet. The Yurko skimmer burned behind them, smoke spiraling into the sky. Mira knew more would come soon. They always tracked their dead. The desert would become a battlefield, and her partner was no longer just a man. He was something the Yurko had never faced before, something born of pain, sacrifice, and human will. And for the first time in her life, Mira felt that humanity's chances of survival might rest on this impossible change. The desert gave no mercy. Days blurred into each other as Mira and Jarek pressed deeper into the wastes, leaving the burning wreck of the Vanguard behind. The twin suns cooked the dunes by day, while the nights froze so sharp that frost clung to their breaths. Food was scarce, water scarcer, and every time they lit a signal fire or powered up a transmitter, Yurko scouts descended from the skies. Jarek moved differently now. His steps were heavier, each stride sinking deeper into the sand, yet he never tired. His muscles had grown denser, his frame broader, and the glowing hair that covered him shifted like it was alive, hardening against the heat, softening at night to keep him warm. Mira watched him with a mixture of wonder and unease. He wasn't the same man she had saved. He was more than human, but also less familiar every day. Their first close call came on the third night. Mira had managed to splice fragments of a broken comm beacon together, enough to send a faint signal across the stars. She only transmitted for 30 seconds before cutting it off. Any longer would be suicide. But even that was too long. Not an hour later, the skies throbbed with the low buzz of Yurko hunters. 3 skimmers swept across the dunes, their searchlights slicing through the darkness. Mira grabbed her pistol, but Jarek stepped ahead, jaw set. "They're not leaving here," he growled. The first patrol fired, scorching the ground. Jarek lunged, faster than the eye could follow. His hair bristled into hardened spikes, deflecting the plasma that would have killed him. He tore one soldier from its skimmer and snapped its spine across his knee, tossing the body into the sand like broken cargo. Mira handled the others with ruthless precision, firing short bursts that drilled through mandibles and armor alike. Still, there were too many. The dunes erupted with plasma fire, and one blast pinned her down behind a jagged rock. Her pistol overheated, useless until it cooled. A Yurko warrior closed in, raising its blade staff. Mira's heart slammed in her chest. She braced herself, but before the strike could land, Jarek roared. His hair exploded outward in a storm of glowing tendrils, whipping across the battlefield. They lashed the alien apart, slicing through chitin and bone until nothing but shredded limbs fell to the sand. Mira stared, frozen. She had never seen power like that. Not in soldiers, not in machines, not in any human. The dunes were littered with twitching corpses, their blood glowing blue under the stars. But Jarek was shaking. His chest heaved, his eyes wild and unfocused. The glowing strands retracted slowly, trembling like they'd drained every ounce of strength from him. He dropped to his knees, gasping. Mira rushed to him, gripping his shoulders. "Jarek, listen to me! Stay with me!" He blinked, focus snapping back. His hair dimmed. I almost lost myself," her stomach twisted. She helped him up, but fear gnawed at her chest. The thorn hadn't just healed him. It was changing him into a weapon, and weapons didn't always remember who they were aimed at. They kept moving, scavenging what they could. In the ruins of an abandoned outpost half buried in sand, Mira hacked into a rusted console and uncovered fragments of human transmissions. A fleet was nearby, hidden, scattered survivors of the war regrouping in orbit. Hope surged inside her. If she could get a full signal through, they might have a chance. But Jarek was haunted. At night, when he thought she slept, he sat alone, staring at his hands as his hair shifted and writhed like it had a mind of its own. She saw him clench his fists, muttering under his breath, "I'm still human. I'm still me." On the fifth night, while they camped in the shadow of jagged cliffs, Mira spoke the words she had held back for days. "Promise me something." Jarek looked up, eyes tired but burning with fire. "If this thing ever takes you over, if you're not you anymore, I'll stop you." "I swear it," he hesitated. The desert wind howled through the cliffs. Then he smiled faintly. Sadness etched into the lines of his face. "Only if you promise one thing in return." She frowned. "What?" "Promise not to give up on me until you're sure I'm gone." Mira's throat tightened. She reached out, gripping his hand. "Deal." The night passed in silence, but the unspoken truth hung heavy between them. The Yurko weren't the only danger stalking the desert. By dawn, the sand trembled again. This time, it wasn't skimmers. It was something bigger. A thunderous rumble rolled across the horizon, and Mira's blood ran cold. Shadows of massive siege beasts crept closer, each one bristling with weapons and claws. The Yurko weren't just hunting anymore. They were coming to claim their prize, and the prize was Jarek. The desert horizon boiled with dust as the Yurko war machine advanced. From the cliffs where Mira and Jarek sheltered, the view stretched endlessly, a tide of crawling siege beasts, each as tall as a fortress, their legs digging into the sand like spears. Above, gunships swept low, their insectoid wings buzzing, dropping clusters of troops that spread across the dunes. Mira's rebuilt comm beacon crackled faintly at her side, its signal climbing toward orbit. She had sent coordinates of their position. The human fleet would hear it, if they survived long enough. "We can't run from that," Mira said, watching the dust cloud grow. Jarek stood beside her, the glow of his hair catching the rising suns. The energy pulsed along his arms and shoulders, bristling with anticipation. He clenched his fists, and the sand beneath him quivered. "Then we don't run. We hold." The Yurko vanguard struck first. Troop carriers slammed into the dunes, opening their jaws to spill armored soldiers. Plasma fire raked the cliffs, exploding stone into shrapnel. Mira dove behind cover, returning shots with cold precision. Each trigger pull dropped an enemy, but for every one that fell, 2 more crawled from the carriers. Jarek leapt from the cliff face. His body landed among them with the force of a meteor. The shockwave hurled aliens through the air. His glowing hair hardened into spears, stabbing outward in every direction. Soldiers shrieked as they were impaled, their bodies tossed like broken dolls. Above, a gunship descended, cannons spinning. Mira sprinted across the rocks, leapt onto the wreckage of a downed skimmer, and fired her pistol directly into its engines. The craft detonated mid-air, raining shards across the battlefield. The sand shook harder. The first siege beast reached the cliffs. It was a monster of both biology and machine. Chitin plating fused with steel, its maw glowing as it charged plasma into its throat. Jarek turned, hair writhing into chains, and whipped them around the beast's legs. With a roar, he pulled. The colossus staggered, collapsing into the dunes with a quake that buried entire squads beneath the sand. But the victory cost him. His body trembled, veins glowing dangerously bright. Mira could see it. The power was feeding on him, draining his humanity piece by piece. Still, there was no time to hesitate. More siege beasts marched, their weapons scorching the cliffs. The sky burned with crossfire and the dunes erupted into chaos. Mira slid into cover beside Jarek, handing him an alien rifle she'd scavenged. "Use it! Save your strength!" He shook his head, voice rough. "This is what I am now. If I stop, they win." She wanted to argue, but plasma bolts rained down, forcing her back into the fight. Then the battlefield shifted. A massive Yurko warship broke through the clouds, descending like a black star. Its hull cracked open, releasing the commander himself, a towering insectoid overlord clad in biocybernetic armor. His claws gleamed with plasma blades, and his many eyes burned with cruel hunger. The alien's voice thundered across the desert, translated through a booming resonance. "Human beast, you are no longer theirs. You belong to us." Every Yurko soldier froze, mandibles clattering in reverence. The commander's arrival silenced even the cannons. Mira's grip tightened on her pistol. She whispered under her breath, "That's him, their leader." Jarek stepped forward, hair flaring like fire in the wind. "I don't belong to anyone." The commander dropped into the dunes, each step shaking the ground. He pointed a claw at Jarek. "Your mutation is ours to harvest. You will fight for the swarm or you will be broken apart." Jarek's eyes narrowed. "I'm not fighting for you." "I'm fighting for us!" He lunged. The desert erupted. The commander's blades cut arcs of plasma through the sand, each strike fast enough to split boulders. Jarek met him head-on, hair-forming shields that sparked against the energy. Sparks sprayed as the two clashed, steel and chitin against living strands that burned like lightning. Mira ducked through enemy fire, cutting down soldiers trying to interfere. But she never took her eyes off the duel. Every strike the commander made was lethal, precise. Every counter Jarek threw looked like it drained him further. Still, he refused to falter. "You're strong," the commander hissed, voice rattling like 1,000 wings. "But strength without the swarm is nothing." Jarek slammed a fist into his chest, hair driving deep like spikes. "You don't understand humans." He twisted the spikes, forcing the alien to stumble. "We fight hardest when everything is against us." The commander roared and knocked him back, sending him crashing into the dunes. Sand exploded around his body. Mira's heart froze until she saw him rise again, glowing brighter than ever, his hair whipping wildly in the desert wind. The siege was no longer just a battle. It was a storm, and its center was Jarek. The clash of Jarek and the Yurko commander turned the battlefield into a storm. Every blow shook the dunes, every strike lit the sky. Soldiers from both sides froze, watching two titans carve the desert into glass. The commander's plasma blades hissed as they sliced arcs of heat. Jarek countered with living tendrils of hair, glowing, wrapping, hardening into shields and spears. Sparks erupted where blade met strand, each impact showering fire across the sand. Mira moved like a shadow through the chaos. While the duel consumed attention, she darted between wreckage and bodies, scavenging rifles, grenades, anything she could hurl back at the swarm. Every shot she fired was to clear Jarek's path, to buy him the seconds he needed to keep breathing. But the commander was no ordinary foe. He struck with inhuman precision, forcing Jarek onto the defensive. Each swing dug deeper, searing through his glowing hair and burning into skin beneath. The smell of scorched flesh filled the air. Jarek staggered, one knee sinking into the sand. His chest heaved, and the glow flickered. The commander's mandibles clattered in triumph. "You burn bright, human beast!" the alien hissed, voice like rust on steel. But flames die. "The swarm endures!" The blade swung downward. Mira shouted, firing 3 shots in quick succession. 2 bolts pinged harmlessly against the commander's armor. The third struck a joint, sparking, staggering him for the smallest instant, enough for Jarek to roll aside and regain his footing. The commander turned, eyes narrowing on Mira. Rage rippled through his chitin. "You dare?" He leapt, faster than she expected. Plasma blade arced toward her, cutting the air. Mira dove behind a shattered carrier, but not fast enough. The edge caught her across the side, searing into her ribs. Pain ripped through her body, her scream drowned by the crack of molten sand. Blood soaked her uniform. She crumpled, pistol slipping from her hand. "Mira!" Jarek's roar was primal, tearing through the storm. Something inside him snapped. His hair ignited into a blinding wave of energy, strands multiplying, lengthening, wrapping his entire body in a mane of living fire. He launched himself at the commander with unstoppable fury. The desert erupted in chaos. The commander's blades struck again, but Jarek's hair absorbed them, coiling around the weapons and wrenching them aside. Tendrils lashed outward, wrapping around the alien's limbs. The commander fought savagely, mandibles snapping, armor sparking as he struggled. But Jarek's strength surged with every heartbeat. "You hurt her," Jarek growled, voice shaking the ground. "That was your last mistake." He pulled the tendrils tight. The commander's armor cracked. Plasma leaked in sputters. The alien shrieked, claws flailing, tearing chunks of flesh from Jarek's arms. Yet he didn't relent. Mira, half-conscious, lifted her head. Through blurred vision, she saw Jarek towering, hair blazing brighter than the sun's, crushing the warlord in a cocoon of glowing strands. It wasn't human strength, it was something beyond. Born of sacrifice and rage, the commander's body split. Chitin shattered, cybernetics sparked, ichor sprayed across the dunes. With one final scream, the alien overlord was crushed into silence. His carcass collapsed, smoking, buried beneath Jarek's glowing mane. Silence followed. For the first time, the Yurko soldiers hesitated. Their leader, unbeaten, invincible, was dead at the hands of a single human. Fear rippled through their ranks. Jarek stumbled forward, every strand of his hair trembling with residual energy. His chest heaved, skin blistered from burns, eyes bloodshot. He turned toward Mira, collapsing beside her. She tried to sit up, clutching her ribs. You killed him." Her voice was faint, but a smile ghosted her lips. Jarek shook his head, blood dripping onto the sand. "Not for me. For us." His body trembled violently. The power coursing through him was unstable, tearing at his human core. Mira pressed her hand against his face, forcing his eyes to hers. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Don't let it take you." Above them, the sky lit with fire. Streaks of light cut across the heavens, human reinforcements dropping from orbit. Ships roared through the clouds, bombarding the Yurko forces. Gunships tore into the siege beasts, explosions rattling the dunes. The tide had turned. Humanity had arrived. Mira's vision blurred from blood loss. But she clung to the sight of Jarek, glowing against the desert, the impossible warrior who had turned the swarm's fear back upon them. He leaned close, his voice cracked but steady. "Looks like we bought them the time they needed." Then his head sagged against her shoulder, and the battlefield trembled with the sound of retreating Yurko. The last stand was over. But the cost was far from paid. The desert battlefield smoldered, a graveyard of metal and chitin. Human dropships landed in waves, their engines blasting sand into whirlwinds. Marines poured out, finishing off the stragglers as the Yurko broke into disarray, abandoning the carcasses of their war beasts. For the first time in days, the dunes echoed not with screams, but with victory chants. Mira lay propped against a medic's arm, half-conscious, her ribs wrapped in field bandages. Her eyes never left Jarek, who was sprawled beside her in the sand, surrounded by scorched strands of hair that still glowed faintly. His body looked broken, every inch burned, every muscle trembling. But he breathed. That was enough. Commanders rushed forward, stunned by what they saw. They had heard rumors over comms. One man holding the swarm, one soldier destroying the Yurko leader. But seeing it with their own eyes was something else. Soldiers whispered, not his name, but titles: the burning hair, the human flame, the beast slayer. The medics worked frantically, but Jarek's biology resisted their tools. His body pulsed with strange currents, strands of hair lashing out when they tried to inject stabilizers. Mira forced herself forward, gripping his hand. "Stop!" she said. "He won't let go for strangers. He only listens when he knows it's us," her words anchored him. The wild hair coiled back, dimming, allowing the medics to bind wounds and sedate him. Mira refused to be carried away. She stayed with him as they lifted both onto the evac craft, the battlefield shrinking beneath them. Days passed aboard the carrier Resolute. Humanity's fleet swept the Yurko from orbit, hammering their retreating forces. Victory, but a fragile one. Everyone knew they would return. Inside the infirmary, Jarek became the heart of whispers. His hair regrew at unnatural speed, spreading like living armor across his body. It wasn't just recovery, it was evolution. Doctors ran scans, baffled at how his cells had fused with foreign energy. He wasn't entirely human anymore, yet he remained Jarek, His mind, his scars, his voice when he finally spoke. Mira sat by his side every day, her own injuries slowly healing. Sometimes she laughed through pain at the irony. The wound she had stitched with her own hair and a cactus thorn had been the spark. Now his body was a living storm of hair and fire. When he finally opened his eyes, his first words weren't about himself. "Did we win?" Mira smirked through tears. "Of course. You made sure of it, but rest didn't last. The fleet intercepted fragments of Yurko transmissions. The death of their commander had not broken them. It had enraged them. Another invasion was coming, larger, angrier, desperate to erase the shame of defeat. Humanity had bought time, not peace. The High Council debated evacuation, defense lines, scorched earth tactics. Fear spread like frost. And then Jarek walked into the chamber. He wasn't the same man who had staggered in the desert. His body was leaner, stronger, his hair alive with faint embers, shifting like a cape of fire. He stood in silence until every voice stopped. "I faced their leader," he said. "I know how they fight. I know how to break them." Some feared him, whispering that no human should hold such power. Others looked at him with awe, seeing not a weapon but a symbol. Mira stood at his side, unflinching. "Use him," she told the council. "Not as a monster, but as proof. Humanity adapts, we endure. Even when cut open, even when dying, we make ourselves stronger. That's what they can't kill." The war that followed was brutal. But Jarek was more than a soldier. He was a banner. When he charged into battle, glowing hair flowing like a comet's tail, humans rallied behind him. Alien fleets trembled at the sight, remembering the commander who had fallen. Mira fought too, refusing to stand back. She became the strategist to his fury, the mind to his fire. Together they led strike after strike, carving paths through impossible odds. They weren't invincible. Each battle scarred them deeper, each sacrifice weighed heavier. But wherever Jarek fought, hope burned brighter. Humanity stopped running. They began pushing back. Years later, when the war finally ended, legends had already formed. Children played games pretending to wield hair like fire. Veterans carried tokens of strands they swore had saved their lives. Across colonies, murals rose of two figures, a soldier wrapped in burning hair, and a woman with scissors, cutting her own strands to save him. On a quiet colony far from the front, Jarek and Mira finally found peace. His body still pulsed with that strange, glowing strength. But the war was over. She teased him often about it. "All this because I cut my hair once. Next time you're bleeding out, I'm shaving you bald." He laughed, softer than the roar he once gave in the desert, but filled with the same fire. They never forgot the battles, the loss, the pain. But their story was no longer just about survival. It was about what humanity did best, turning wounds into weapons, sacrifice into strength, despair into defiance. Because in the end, it wasn't alien tech or cosmic miracles that saved them. It was a woman stitching a wound with nothing but her hair and a cactus thorn, and a man who refused to let that sacrifice be wasted. And from that moment, humanity was never the same again.